Hello everyone, George here, and leading off from the last several videos, we're getting to the point where our custom view is becoming pretty heavy. We've got a lot of functionality, a lot of features between our canvas objects, our custom view itself, and then sound and vectors. We're getting really close to want to start to break all of this game code out into our own game engine, but we're not quite there yet. We're going to do a few more things before we enter that area. So in this video, what we're going to do is tackle a problem I mentioned last time, which has to do with the fact that we need to instantiate and destroy objects potentially from other places. That is not within the actual custom view where we have our entire array list of canvas objects, but instead externally to the custom view. And we're going to do this by following something very similar to what other programs use, like Unity, in the sense of we're going to create and destroy different objects. So before we dive in, let's talk a little bit about how this whole thing works. So at the moment, what we basically have is a big old list of canvas objects. When we get into this later on, we're going to be using threading actually to loop over and update these objects as well as draw them. Because we'll be using threading, we're not really going to know when the end of this state occurs. So if we have random game objects or other objects potentially creating new ones, we need to make sure we have some sort of a strict order or something that makes this work in a very known way. To do that, what we're going to do is basically create two different methods stolen right from how Unity does it. In Unity's name, we're going to create an instantiate and a destroy. And instantiate and destroy are going to take as parameters our canvas objects. At the end of our loop, after it's gone through and updated and drawn everything, what we're going to do is add a final thing to it. And that is removing canvas objects that would need to be removed and adding ones that need to be added to our system. So it's going to iterate over our list of objects and nuke any ones that we've decided to destroy, and it's going to add any ones that we've created. Now we're going to make this function accessible to other parts of our game engine, that is the canvas objects themselves. The way we're going to do this, first of all, is by allowing other objects to grab the instance, that is the specific instance of our canvas here. Now in the future, this will become the game engine itself. But for right now, since we don't have a game engine class, everything's built into that custom view, it's going to be the custom view that it grabs. So our canvas object will request the instance of our canvas view, and then it's going to use that to either destroy or instantiate new objects. So it'll be able to create different objects, pass them over. During the update loop, when it gets to the end of its loop after all its work, it is then going to remove or add them based upon whatever our canvas objects have basically stated to do. Hopefully that made perfect sense. Now here we are finally in code. Now all of the other canvas objects we have are going to need to grab access to our custom view. So to make this whole thing work with the custom view and the ability for multiple canvas objects to grab it, we're actually going to create a static method. And that static method is going to allow other objects in the scene to grab the canvas object and then instantiate, which means add a new object, or destroy, which would be removing an object from the class. So first we need a private static custom view. Let's just call that instance. Now obviously no one can access it at this time. Only custom view can mess with that. What we're going to do is populate that right at the start of our creation. That is the public custom view. So let's do instance is equal to this. Now because the custom view, or what will become our game engine, happens first, we don't need to worry about this thing not getting created or populated first. It's fine how it is. What we do need though is a public static get instance method. This is going to return our custom view. That is this instance here. So let's just do return instance. Why does this work? Well, the only time objects are really going to be able to grab the instance is after the custom view has been created. The idea is that our canvas objects exist within this larger framework of the custom view, or what will become the game engine. Since this thing happens, it populates itself right at the very start, so that when we start creating new canvas objects, we can always rely on the fact that this instance will actually be valid. It will not be a null value. Therefore, we're fine to work within these constraints. Let's go ahead and add some functionality. So let's do a public void, and let's call it instantiate. And that's going to take in a canvas object. And let's create our next method, public void destroy. And let's also have that take a canvas object. Okay, now that we have these two functions or methods, what are they actually going to do for us? Well, nothing yet. We actually need two new variables. That is two new lists that are going to take care of this stuff for us. So let's create a new array list that's going to hold canvas objects. And let's call that toInstantiate. And then let's make a new array list, also holding canvas objects, called toDestroy. Both of these can be private or protected if you want to extend this class in the future. I'm going to make them private for the moment. All right, so both of these are not accessible outside of this class, and that's important because we don't want other people adding things willy-nilly. They're going to add them through this instantiate and destroy method. So when you pass one of these guys in, what it's going to do is add it to it. So let's go over here, and we're going to need to create these variables, obviously. So let's do that right here. So toInstantiate equals a new array list, and then toDestroy is equal to a new array list. There we are. Now within here, we can begin adding these objects that are passed in to those particular lists. So toInstantiate.add, and all we need to do is pass it the object. Now for toDestroy.add object. So that part's all really simple. The part that gets a little bit more interesting is where in our loop, in our updating loop, we're going to grab all these new objects and add them or destroy any objects as well. So coming on down, now right now our onDraw loop is our main loop. So after we draw all of our objects, but before we invalidate things, is where we're going to want to update our list. So what do I mean by update? Well, first we're going to remove any objects that have been requested to be destroyed, and then we're going to add any of those new objects that have been created. It isn't until the next update loop that all those new objects get a chance to update themselves. So let's do canvas objects dot remove, and we're going to pass in the object we want to remove. That means we need a for loop. So for int I is equal to 0, I is less than toDestroy, I plus plus. Great. I'm actually going to go ahead and copy this loop because I'm lazy. I'm going to put it down here, and that should be dot size. This should be toInstantiate dot size. So now we get to call our canvas object dot remove, and we're going to remove toDestroy dot get, and that's going to be I, the current index we're on. When we're done with this, we clear it out. So we're going to do toDestroy dot clear. We've destroyed all the objects that need destroying, and we're moving on to the next thing. We're going to do the same thing over here, so it'll be toInstantiate.clear. The reason for this is we don't want to keep those objects in there. So within here, let's do canvas objects.add. We're going to add each one to it. So that's really simple. It's just toInstantiate.get and I. So why is any of this important? What makes this better to use than before? If you recall in the past video, we had an issue where I actually wanted to make it so that the particle explosions occurred not when the object was first created, but instead when the ball bounces against a border. I have no way within the custom view to know when the ball actually bounces against something, unless I add a lot of functionality to add that. What I can do now, though, is grab the custom view and say, when this thing bounces, please instantiate that object. So why don't we go ahead and do that right now and make this work? So down here in our onTouch method is where we were creating our particle explosions. Now that was when we pressed on the thing. We're going to take this now and remove it. So let's go ahead and Control X all that code. And we're going to bring that into our bouncing ball. What we want to have happen is within bouncing ball, whenever that thing bounces against one of those sides, we want this to occur. So that's going to happen in any one of these cases here. We're no longer generating it wherever we press something, we're generating it wherever the ball currently is. So let's go ahead and grab our vector2D position and put that information there. So position.x, delete all that, and then let's do position.y. Great. And that's still the number of particles we want to generate. And instead of calling canvasObjects.add, since we don't have access to that, instead we're going to grab our custom view. So let's do custom view, since it's a static method, dot get instance. So that's going to return that to us, dot instantiate. And now we pass in the canvas object that we want to be added in there, and that's going to be our particle explosion. Now we can get rid of that line. We also had a problem with destroying the particles from within themselves. So after the particle expires, whenever it's done with things, it wants to remove itself from the engine. Well, an easy way to make that happen is simply having it call on itself the destroy method, so that when we get to the end of everything, it disappears as well. So let's go ahead and do that. Going to particle explosion now. So to handle destruction of everything, all we need to do is see whether or not there are any particles that are still alive. Because if we come up here, we have a Boolean value called active. And these things get deactivated as soon as their life expires too far. So if we come over in here, there we create the object. And going down further in onUpdate, we check to see whether or not it's active. And if its current life is less than 0, well, it becomes false. So within our particle explosion class, now we can destroy this thing when there's nothing left, no particles currently active. So here on update, we have time passed, and we continue to add that. Then we iterate over all the different particles. We check to see if the particle is activated, and if it is, then we move on. What we're going to want to do is record how many particles are left. First of all, tabbing everything over, and let's create a new value, int active particles is equal to 0. And if the particle is active, we're just going to do active particles plus plus, so it increases in size. When that for loop ends, we're going to see whether or not active particles is still equal to 0. So if active particles is equal to 0, then we need to destroy ourselves. So let's call custom view dot get instance dot destroy. And we're going to destroy ourselves. So let's pass in this. So now it's time for us to upload this to our phone and see what happens. So now let's choose our device, hit run. I'm going to target my phone, and here we are. So let's see what happens. Let's draw a vector out and make that ball bounce. Boop. And we can see the particle explosion now happens over there. There's a particle explosion. It looks like it's only occurring... And that is because I'm an idiot and this didn't get added to the other sides of the screen. So let's add all them, and you too, and you as well. There we are. Let's go ahead and stop this incessant booping. I'm going to turn down my sound because that's annoying. Let's go ahead and do a quick update. There we are, and see now what happens. And now we have particle explosions being created whenever it hits different objects. Wonderful. I'm just going to create a bunch of these and see what happens. Look at all those wonderful particle explosions exploding everywhere.
Great.
We're slowly getting to the point where we're creating our own game engine with lots of different functionality for us to be able to make anything we want to. I know we're using simple spheres and so forth, but really we've got a lot of what's necessary to create an engine. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, give me a like. If you don't, not only give me a dislike, but comment and let me know what was wrong with it. Otherwise, feel free to subscribe so that you can see more content like this, and I'll see you all next time. So long, goodbye.